Hello, and welcome to another episode of Bupsa's Dharma Lounge. In this episode, I'll be sharing about how when I'm really paying attention, I find that even a seemingly uneventful day can be filled with precious gifts. Perhaps this will be your experience as well. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another episode of Bupsa's Dharma Lounge. Hi, I'm Bupsa Frank Jude, and this is the last episode of this year. So I want to, before I forget, tell you all or wish you all whatever holidays you may practice, that they be happy and healthy, and that we have a happy and healthy new year. If you've been finding this podcast of any benefit to your own practice, to your life, please consider supporting it if you haven't already by subscribing, rating, only if it's 4 or 5 stars, and commenting, hitting like, whether it's on YouTube or on any of the other platforms such as Spotify or Anchor or podcast app. I think there might be a few others. And I also want to thank those who have offered dana. Again, I speak about dana in an earlier episode. It's just a gift-giving kind of economic structure. It is anti-capitalist. I do not monetize this, but if you would like to share with me, there'll be links in the description for PayPal. So since the last episode, dana has been offered by Chingu Jason Cummings, Joel J. Ellie Kupawait, and I might have mispronounced that. I'm always weird about those English names that are spelled with weird letter combinations. Weird to me, let me be clear. And then Gabion Sally Weber. So thank you all for your continued support. This episode, I'd like to share a practice about gratitude. Now, on the surface, gratitude may appear to arise either from or along with a sense that somehow we're indebted to another person for taking care of us in some way. But if we look deeper, we might find that the feeling is actually a heightened awareness of our connection to everything else. Gratitude, at least for me, spontaneously flows when I break out of the small self-centered point of view, along with the ferocious expectations and demands. And then I begin to appreciate that through the labors and intentions, and even the simple existence of an inconceivably large number of people, weather patterns, chemical reactions, and the like, my life, your life, all life is richly supported. And the truth is, we are supported in countless ways through each moment of our life. We awaken on schedule, for instance, when the alarm clock beeps, thanks to the engineers, the designers, the assembly workers, the salespeople, and all the others who are standing behind the clock that's right there on our bedstand. Are the power company workers who manage our electricity supply, and many others. Our morning practice, whether asana or meditation, is a gift of generations of yogis who've shared the teachings and practices over millennia. And then more recently, of our local teachers and of their teachers, of the authors of books or the videos that we may use to support our practice. When we begin to think about it, really the list goes on endlessly. And when we awaken to the truth of this incredible interconnectedness, we may find ourselves spontaneously filled with joy and appreciation. And it's for this reason that one of the most transformative practices that we can engage in is the cultivation of gratitude. Patanjali wrote that santosha, often translated as contentment or appreciation for what we already have, leads to unexcelled joy. And other yogic texts say that this sense of appreciation is the supreme joy that naturally leads to the realization of the absolute. Thankfully, gratitude can be cultivated. It just takes practice. And if you're like most people, you notice what goes wrong more often than what goes right. Human beings seem hardwired to notice how reality fails to meet some idea of how we think things should be. Cognitive scientists call this the negativity bias. As neuroscience researcher Rick Hansen points out, we're like Teflon for the positive and like Velcro for the negative. Like, how many times a day do you sink into disappointment, frustration, or sadness because others haven't met your expectations? If we limit our attention to how life gets us down, we blind ourselves to the myriad gifts that we receive all the time. Greg Kretsch, the author of Naikan, Gratitude, Grace, and the Japanese Art of Self-Reflection, shares a story that I found a little humorous, but also one that cuts quite close to home, about a time when he went hiking up a mountain after a huge storm, and he was feeling resentful at all the trees that had fallen and blocked the path. On the way back down the mountain, he decided to count the fallen trees, and he found that there were actually more trees that had been sawed through, clearing the path, than trees that hadn't yet been sawed through or cleared. He apparently simply ignored or took for granted those that had been cleared. That right there is the negativity bias. Now, we can end this frustrating situation by mindfully shifting our attention. When we stop and really look, which is how Thich Nhat Hanh often described shamatha vipassana, shamatha, stop, vipassana, look, we see that we are supported continuously in literally countless ways. This is the highest wisdom of yoga, the truth of which Thich Nhat Hanh called interbeing, which is the truth of no separation. When I've done this as a practice, I find myself growing much more appreciative of what I have, and in seeing how dependent my life is on the labor and presence of others, it has stoked my desire to be more generous, wishing in some small way to kind of like pay it forward for others, which is one of the reasons why I offer so much of my Dharma teachings on a dana basis. I don't charge for them. To begin cultivating gratitude, it helps to be aware of some of the most pernicious obstacles to doing so. Often, it is these very roadblocks that, when we see them, can provide the opportunities for practice. And one of the most obvious obstacles is the failure to notice what we have. As Joni Mitchell sang, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. So the first thing you need to do is start paying attention to what you have. Really look at it. And here's where expectations can prove to be an obstacle. We expect our alarm clocks to work. We expect our cars to start when we turn the ignition key. We expect our loved ones to be there for us. And once we come to expect something, we tend not to pay it as much attention. We tend to take it for granted. So we can actually use our expectations as reminders to cultivate gratitude. A couple of months ago, my car failed to stop because the battery died. And ever since, every morning I go in there and I'm really attuned to turning the key and feeling a rush of gratitude and appreciation when the car starts. Another big obstacle, and therefore another opportunity to cultivate gratitude, is the trap of feeling entitled. Gratitude may not spontaneously arise when the sanitation worker takes away the trash, since they're just doing their job. But the fact is, regardless of their motivation, we are still benefiting from their efforts, and we could meet them with an expression of gratitude. A formal practice for cultivating gratitude, developed in Japan by a practitioner of Pure Land Buddhism is known as Naikan, which means looking inside. Now, I might not get that pronunciation correct either, so if any of you speak Japanese and you want to write a phonetic correction, I would greatly appreciate it. But Naikan is a structured method of self-reflection that encourages an objective survey of oneself and one's relationship to the world. At its most profound, Naikan is practiced on retreat with trained counselors, where one is guided to survey all of one's major relationships, starting with your parents and moving on. However, it can also be done as a daily practice, and the rewards may become immediately evident in the blossoming of a natural, deeply felt sense of gratitude and appreciation for one's life and for all the gifts we receive daily. Gifts that we come to realize were always there, but went unnoticed and therefore unappreciated. The practice of Naikan can lead the practitioner to the realization that life is rich with connection and support. You may even come to see the truth of the exhortation of the 13th century mystic Meister Eckhart, who wrote, "If the only prayer you said in your whole life was thank you, that would suffice." So, to practice this, I suggest that you set aside some time, preferably at the end of the day, to try this practice. So either stop listening now and maybe come back at a more convenient time, or if you feel like you're ready to engage in the practice, then please sit comfortably and close your eyes. Take a few moments to bring attention to your breath. See if you can feel the belly rising and falling. Just taking a few moments to really come back to full presence, collecting and unifying the mind. Remember, when the mind wanders, it's mindfulness that sees the wandering, so there's never any reason to be irritated or frustrated with the wandering mind. It's just doing what minds do. Our practice is simply to come back to just this, just here, just now. Now, feeling perhaps just a little bit more settled, we begin to ask a series of questions. The first question to contemplate is to ask yourself, what have I received today? Be specific. Reflect on as many things as you can recall. Remember, it can be as simple as something like your partner smiling, the sound of birdsong, the driver who let you merge into the crowded freeway. And again, the motivation or the attitude of those who gave you something is not the issue at all. So for instance, maybe you were offered lunch because you showed up at lunchtime, not because your friend made a personal effort to make you lunch. Perhaps the barista made a wonderful cappuccino. And sure, it's their job, but still, you benefited from it. The mere fact that you benefited from someone's action is all that is needed to cultivate gratitude. As you go through the day and think about the myriad ways you may have benefited from others, you can take some time to notice which of these things you did not appreciate as they happened. For instance, maybe you were engaged in a phone conversation while that barista made and handed you your cappuccino. So notice what you didn't appreciate and try to recall what was taking your attention. Were you stuck in problem-solving mode? Were you making judgments? Were you otherwise occupied? We often live as if the world owes us. So as you reflect on what you've been given today, you might see that, if anything, if we were to try to keep score, you owe the world an insurmountable debt. That kind of insight can be more than merely humbling. Hopefully, it cultivates a deeper sense of gratitude, appreciation, and a natural desire to be generous in serving others. So take a few more moments to continue to think about what you've received. And then let go for a moment and just do a quick scan of your body. Make any minor adjustments in your posture if you started to slump. Notice how it feels physically, energetically, mentally to be sitting, feeling the breath, the belly rising and falling. As we move to the second question, asking yourself, what have I given today? As you contemplate this question, go through the day's events in the same way, but this time noticing what you have given to others. And again, be as specific and concrete as possible. And as with what we received, in our giving, your motivation is absolutely irrelevant. So you paid for that cappuccino. You may have even left a tip. I hope you did. It's expected, yes, but still, you gave. And the barista benefited from your giving. Again, it could be very simple things. Perhaps you fed your cats, or you washed the breakfast dishes. Perhaps you sent a friend a holiday greeting card. Without any great fanfare, when you really look at your actions throughout the day, you may find that you have contributed to the well-being of many people and animals. That in fact, you make a positive difference to the planet. So again, take some time reviewing your day to contemplate what you have given to others. As you go through this contemplation, don't forget, it may have been the gift, the kindness of a compliment or supporting words. And once again, letting go of the question, the review, scan the body once again. Perhaps some shift in how it feels physically or energetically or mentally has been arising through this practice. Perhaps not. But just feeling the belly rising and falling as we prepare to contemplate, to respond to the third and final question. Ask yourself, what difficulties and troubles did I cause today? So again, be specific and don't overlook the seemingly insignificant. Right? Most likely, most of the things were relatively minor. For instance, your list may include things like, I backed up traffic while looking for a place to park. Or, something I did earlier, I chased the cats off the love seat so I could sit there. This question is not meant to bum you out, but it can be the most difficult. But it is an important part of the practice. It may bring up remorse, but its primary purpose is simply to provide a more realistic view of one's life. In general, we are very aware of how others cause us inconvenience or difficulty, but we rarely notice when we are the source of inconvenience. And again, if we do, we usually brush it aside as an accident, not big a deal, simply something we didn't mean to do. Due to another cognitive bias called the attribution bias, we tend to cut ourselves a huge length of slack, blaming conditions, external conditions for our mess-ups. But then we attribute bad intent or character defects in others. But seeing how we might cause others difficulty can remind us again of the grace by which we live. So just take another moment or two to think of any other inconveniences you may have caused. And once again, letting go, feeling the belly rising and falling. Try to hold the whole body in awareness to notice how it feels, physically, energetically, mentally. And taking 3 more breaths on the third exhalation, opening the eyes, coming out of this contemplation. So if you want to make this a practice, maybe a daily practice, again, I find the most conducive time to practice Naikan is in the evening. And one thing I might do is just set a timer to go off every 5 minutes. So I give 5 minutes to each question. You don't have to be as structured, or you could be more structured and give yourself more time, whatever else. But remember, these questions are meant to provide a framework for reflecting on all your relationships, those with your family, friends, co-workers, partners, pets, and even objects, possessions. And you can reflect on the events of one day or a specific person over the course of your relationship, right? You might think of your best friend, your BFF, and think about things over the course of your relationship, maybe over the course of 5, 10 years, right? Or you can reflect on a visit with family or friends. I personally have found this quite a valuable practice for during the holiday season. There's a lot of stress around the holidays, often for many of us. So taking some time to review these three questions in regard to a family event around the holidays could be helpful. But remember, what makes this a meditative practice is that we are not analyzing our motivations or our intentions. We're not interpreting or judging ourselves or others. We're simply shifting our attention from self-centered thinking in order to see things as they really are. And all yoga traditions point out, in that kind of seeing, there can be wisdom and liberation. Thank you again for any support for this podcast. It is my deepest wish that if you're listening to this at the time of its recording or soon after, that you have a wonderful, safe and healthy holiday season. And may 2023 bring greater ease, comfort, and peace to more beings throughout the world. Thank you.